So finally, we come to Cassandra, a project that deals directly with the problem of the future and futurity in the way in which we attempt to conceptualize and model that futurity as a technology for making good on our relationship with it. One of the sort of, I don't know, slogans or something of the New Normal program that preceded the Terraforming was the future has not been canceled. It was really just meant to sort of imply, to say simply that kind of self-validating, self-perpetuating collapse scenarios do not a plan make. It also meant to call in the history of kind of waiting, the history and waiting of Russian utopian thought, science fiction, and futurism as inheritances to reclaim. However, in the early 20th century, when these were first composed, the future, quote unquote, was thought of as something to be achieved. Today, the future, however, is not just something to be achieved, but something to be prevented. Speculative thought is mobilized to this task of preventing the future so that another one might, with luck, come to pass instead. Achieved because prevented. The history of the future, history of futurism, or in this more recent history of the future, is part of what this project seeks to investigate and rehearse and indeed steer. One way to think about this is the shift in, again, mid-20th century between the idea of the future as a kind of teleological and deterministic direction, that if we could know either that the future was foretold in eschatology, and the job of futurism was simply to detect the signals of its imminence, or future could be determined literally deterministically. If we could gather enough information and data about the present moment, it could be deduced accordingly. This gave way to an understanding of the future not as a kind of singular direct outcome, but as one that was much more contingent on multiple variables and initial state conditions that arrived, and sort of that with it came some of the techniques of, for example, scenario planning, by which critical variables are matrixed against each other. And the future is understood not as the one thing that is going to happen, but rather as a multiple possible futures, each of which could happen and each of which deserves to be entertained in its own regard. And this forking and proliferation of our understanding of the future suggests, in a certain sense, that we have less agency in the construction of it because it seems less deterministic. On the other hand, it suggests that we actually have more agency in it because the composability and steerage of each of these critical variables is understood to be available in this way. Now, linking this to the problematics of the terraforming and planetarity more specifically, this group is looking at the ways in which scenario planning, as I've just described, has been part of the IPCC analysis of the implications of the climate change that we are in the midst of, and a rather direct critique of the ways in which those scenarios are composed, the relationship between quantitative and qualitative information, the kind of monologic structure of the discourses that are allowed to interpret and represent information to constitute those forms of the future. And so the project it is suggestive of alternatives to this model. Climate change, of course, is as we've discussed in relationship to some of the other projects, is itself a concept that is wrapped up with the modeling of the past and present, and the ways in which the future might be constituted based on this information. And so it itself is bound up with this. And because it's bound up with it in this way, the role of simulation, to simulate the past, to simulate the present, and indeed to simulate the future, takes on a special importance. And For Cassandra, the role of simulation, which they identify as a kind of recursive simulation, not only comes to draw a picture of the future, but indeed to determine what that future might be according to the logics of that simulation. For them, this implies moments of artificial agency within it. That said, the name Cassandra, as they will take pains to make clear, is not just about prediction. Cassandra was not a futurist in the sense that we may think about it. Her gift was not of divination to predict, but of sensitivity, to be able to read and interpret the weak signals of the moment, to understand their implications. And indeed, that's what this project does quite well. It's proposed as a book. The texts that they have composed as three authors working together are quite substantial, much more than that could be presented within 20 minutes. And so consider this project as an introduction to that much longer book project, which we're all looking forward to its eventual publication, which will be soon. So with that, let me introduce Cassandra.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Anastasiia. I do architectural history and preservation, and I'm joining you today from the Russian South.
Hello everyone. My name is Laura. I'm an artist and researcher from Italy, now based in Berlin.
Hi everyone, my name is Chiara. I'm an economist and designer and calling from Berlin today as well. We are very happy to introduce you to Cassandra. Cassandra envisions alternative literacies for scenario planning through narratives that are written before climate projections and after climate modeling.